My son tried to take my life with a box of chocolates he knew I would never suspect. And without realizing it, I saved myself by making my daughter-in-law and my grandchildren jealous. When he called to ask if I had eaten them, I calmly told him no, that I had given them to Lena and the kids. The silence on the phone felt endless. Then he screamed, frantic, "You did what?" At that moment, I had no idea why Evan was reacting like that. I simply assumed he was annoyed because I had handed his gift to someone else. How foolish I was. My name is Mara. I'm 67 years old. For almost 40 years, I gave up everything for my son, Evan. Everything. My youth, my ambitions, my savings. I adopted him when he was just 3 after his biological parents died in a sudden roadside accident. I gave him my last name, my devotion, my whole life. But on my 67th birthday, everything shattered. The box of chocolates that arrived at my door looked like a thoughtful present from a grateful son. They were luxurious, expensive looking. The wrapping was dark green instead of the usual gold he used to choose, but the elegant style was familiar. A small card rested on top. "To the best mother in the world, with love, Evan." I felt so moved. It had been months since I'd received even a hint of tenderness from him. Ever since he married Lena, things had deteriorated. She swept into our lives like a cold breeze that never warmed, slowly poisoning Evan's mind against me. "Your mother is too intrusive," she'd say. "She's too involved. She's too old for you to keep looking after her." And Evan, my Evan, the boy I had poured my heart into, began to pull away. Visits became rare. Phone calls grew colder. Even his hugs started to feel distant. Still, I held on to hope. I kept believing that the son I raised would come back to me, that Lena hadn't completely broken the bond we'd built. So when the chocolates arrived that morning, I truly thought he had remembered his love for me, that maybe things were healing. The chocolates looked beautiful, each piece perfectly crafted with little metallic accents. They were the sort of treat that cost a small fortune. But I have always been the same, forever putting others first. "These chocolates are too fancy for me alone," I told myself. "Lena and the kids will enjoy them far more." The children were always my weakness. Despite their mother's coldness, I adored them. They were my grandchildren, last pure connection to my Evan. So I rewrapped the chocolates gently and drove to their house. Lena opened the door, as usual wearing that insincere smile of hers, one that never reached her eyes, the one dripping with hidden disdain even when her voice pretended to be polite. "Hello, Mara," she said in that patronizing tone she reserved for me. "What brings you here?" I handed her the box and explained that Evan had sent them to me, but I wanted to share them with her and the kids. For a brief second, something flickered in her eyes. Not surprise of the pleasant kind, more like fear, alarm. But she quickly masked it and accepted the box. "What a thoughtful gift from Evan," she murmured. "The kids will love it." She didn't invite me in, she never did. She always seemed to find a reason to keep me standing outside, as if I were some unwanted visitor instead of the grandmother of her children. This time she said the kids were resting, that it had been a long day, that maybe another time would be better. I went home feeling a little sad, but also strangely content. I believed I had done a good thing, sharing the joy of my son's gift with his family. I even went to sleep thinking maybe that small gesture would help ease the tension between Lena and me. The next morning, my phone rang early. It was Evan. His voice sounded odd, tight, nervous. "Mum," he said, "how were the chocolates?" The question surprised me. He never cared that much about whether I liked a gift. Usually, once he gave something, he forgot about it completely. "Oh, Evan," I answered honestly, "I gave them to Lena and the kids. You know how much they adore sweets." The silence that followed chilled me to the bone. It felt like the whole world had frozen. Then he erupted. "You did what?" he shouted, with a panic I had never heard from him before. "I gave them to Lena and the kids," I repeated. You're unbelievable, he barked. Did you eat any? Are you sure? Did the kids eat them already? How many? Did you give them the whole box? His questions were frantic, sharp, desperate. A cold suspicion started creeping into my mind. Why did it matter so much that I hadn't eaten one? Why did he sound relieved I hadn't touched them, but horrified that his own wife and children had? He suddenly hung up after calling me careless and saying I had ruined everything. I sat there with the phone in my hand, trembling, no longer sure what any of it meant. That afternoon, Lena called. Her voice was unlike I had ever heard it, tight and frightened. "Ma," she said, "the kids got sick after eating the chocolates. We had to take them to the hospital." My blood turned to ice. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "The doctors think it was some kind of toxin," she said. "The smell was strange when we opened the box, but the kids had already eaten several pieces before we noticed." My whole world began to crumble around me. The chocolates Evan sent, the chocolates I had lovingly passed on, had made my grandchildren sick. That night, sleep refused to come. Every moment replayed in my mind, each one sharper than the last. Evan's unusual gift, his panicked call, the fear in Lena's eyes, the children falling ill. Piece by piece, the truth took shape. My son, my own son, had tried to poison me. The next morning, Lena called again. "Mara," she whispered, "the doctors found traces of a dangerous compound. Someone tampered with those chocolates." I felt my knees weaken, and then she added, soft and trembling, "Mara, I don't think those chocolates were meant to be shared." A long pause. "I think Evan meant them for you." Her words didn't break me. They solidified the truth I had already begun to understand deep inside. The next few hours passed in a blur, each minute twisting tighter around my ribs. I paced the living room over and over, replaying Evan's voice in my head. Not angry, panicked. Not disappointed, terrified, as if something had slipped out of his control. I didn't know what to do with that kind of fear, especially when it came from my own son. Late in the afternoon, my phone buzzed again. It was Lena. "Mara," she said, sounding exhausted. "The doctors stabilized the kids. They're still doing tests, but the worst is over for now." Relief washed over me so quickly it made me dizzy. "Thank God," I whispered. "Can I come?" "No," she said quietly, not unkindly. "Not yet. They're resting. And the doctors? They're asking questions. They want to keep the room calm." I understood. My presence had never calmed Lena. She had always treated me like a disruption. But today, even through the distance in her voice, there was something else underneath. Something I had never heard before. Fear. Real fear. Before hanging up, she added, "Mara, I'll call you once we know more." As soon as the line went dead, I sank onto the couch and pressed my hands to my face. Everything felt wrong, too sharp, too dark. My own thoughts seemed to recoil from me. A knock suddenly rattled the door. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I found a small delivery envelope lying on the doormat. No courier, no footsteps in the hall, nothing but the faint smell of rain drifting in from the stairwell window. The envelope had no return address, only my name printed in quick, uneven strokes. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. Inside was a folded printout, a screenshot of a call log. Evan's call log. Dozens of repeated calls from a number I didn't recognize. The same number, every night, at almost the same time. 10:42 p.m. Over and over, and then 3 calls marked minutes before he phoned me asking about the chocolates. I stared at the page, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. Someone had put this in my hands. Someone wanted me to know something, but who and why, anonymously? I stared at the number so long that the digits blurred. Something inside me knew it mattered, even though I couldn't understand how yet. I folded the page back into the envelope and hid it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to know what it meant. Not yet. As evening approached, Lena called again. "Mara," she said, "the doctor's found something." I stood so quickly I nearly knocked my lamp over. "What is it?" "They ran toxicology tests. The kids had traces of a compound in their system. Not something that appears by accident. Someone added it." The room seemed to tilt. "It was in the chocolates," she continued. I held my breath. "You must tell them everything," Lena added softly. "What happened when they arrived? What Evan said? Everything." I sat down slowly. Do they think it was intentional?" There was a long pause. "Mara," she said quietly, "they don't think this was careless contamination." My throat tightened. "Lena, did Evan send you anything or say anything to you?" "No," she said, "nothing." We both knew she wasn't lying. A mother knows when someone is telling the truth, and a mother knows when her son is hiding something. After the call ended, I forced myself to eat something. Toast that tasted like cardboard and tea that had turned cold by the time I remembered to drink it. Then I sat alone at my kitchen table as the daylight dimmed. That call log image wouldn't leave my mind. 0:42 p.m. What was Evan doing each night at that time? Who was he talking to? And why would someone secretly send me proof of it? I thought about calling Evan, demanding answers, but the memory of his voice earlier, frantic edge, the breathless anger, stopped me. My son had always been unpredictable when cornered. This time he felt dangerous. Hours later, when the sun had disappeared completely, my phone buzzed once more. It was Lena again. "Mara," she whispered, "the doctors want her to file an incident report." My breath caught. An incident report. Her next words shivered straight through me. "They think someone tried to harm the children." The world seemed to narrow to a single thin line. "But the chocolates," I murmured. "Mara," Lena whispered, voice cracking, "I think you know they weren't meant for the kids." I closed my eyes. Because yes, I knew. Of course I knew. And yet hearing someone else say it, especially someone who had always kept me at arm's length, made it real in a way that pierced me. My son had tried to kill me. And I had delivered the poison into the hands of the people I loved most. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, hands shaking in my lap. The quiet of the apartment felt wrong, too gentle, too peaceful for a night like this. Then my phone vibrated again. A new text from an unknown number. The same number I had seen on Evan's call log. Just one message. "He's not who you think he is." I felt the words land like a weight in my chest. Because deep down, I had already begun to understand that. The next morning arrived heavy and grey, the kind of sky that presses down on your shoulders and makes every breath feel a little tighter. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of that anonymous text glowing in the dark. "He's not who you think he is." It echoed in my mind like a warning I had ignored for years. By mid-morning, Lena called to tell me the kids were improving and that the doctors wanted to keep them one more night for observation. Her voice was steadier, but drained. She answered my questions in short sentences, as if every word cost her effort. Before the call ended, she hesitated. "Mara, did Evan call you again?" "No," I said. "He hasn't." A long silence. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll update you later." When the call ended, the apartment felt unbearably small. The walls felt closer than usual. I walked from room to room, unable to sit still, unable to think clearly, until one thought finally cut through the noise. I needed to see my sister. Iris had always been the person Evan ran to when he got himself into trouble. She coddled him from the moment he was adopted, always insisting he needed a softer hand. She had no children of her own, so she poured all her affection and all her blind spots into him. If Evan was hiding, he would be with her. I grabbed my coat and keys and left before I could talk myself out of it. The drive to her house felt longer than usual. The sky hung low over the road and a thin mist clung to the windshield. Every red light felt like a warning. Every car horn felt like a question. By the time I pulled onto Iris's street, my hands were clenched so tightly around the steering wheel that my knuckles had gone pale. And then I saw it. Evan's car. Parked halfway down the block, squeezed behind a pickup truck as if someone had tried to make it less visible. My heart sank. I stepped out of my car, fighting the shaking in my hands. Iris's house, a modest 2-story home with white shutters she repainted every spring, looked painfully ordinary that morning. I forced myself up the walkway and knocked. She opened the door slowly, and the moment she saw me, her expression faltered. Iris had never been a good liar. Her eyes always gave her away. "Mara," she said softly, "I didn't know you were coming." "Yes, you did," I replied, equally soft. "Where is he?" She stepped aside, but she didn't invite me in. For a moment, she simply stood there, wringing her hands, eyes darting toward the living room. I walked past her, and there he was, Evan, sitting at the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, looking nothing like the son I had raised. His hair was messy, his clothes wrinkled, his face pale with exhaustion. But what chilled me most wasn't his appearance, it was the look he gave me when he lifted his head. Not guilt, not shame, not fear of what he'd done, but annoyance, as if my presence was an inconvenience. "Mum," he muttered, "you shouldn't have come here." I took a step closer. "Why?" He didn't answer. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Why did you send me those chocolates?" He sighed, actually sighed, like the conversation bored him. "I didn't expect you to give them away," he said. "That's not my fault." His words sliced through me. "Evan, did you mean to hurt me?" Iris let out a small gasp behind me, as if she wasn't expecting me to ask it so directly. Evan didn't respond right away. He rubbed his forehead with both hands, elbows still planted on his knees. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, calm, too calm. "I needed money, Mum." The world wavered. "What?" He looked up again, and his expression, cold, resigned, made my stomach twist. "I needed money," he repeated, "and you have it." I felt my breath catch. "Evan, I would have helped you. You just had to tell me." "No," he snapped, "you wouldn't. Not the amount I need." Something inside me crumpled. "How much?" He hesitated, jaw tightening. "A lot." Iris finally stepped forward. "Evan, please, don't. Enough," he shot back at her. "She came here for answers. Let her hear them." He leaned back against the couch, eyes fixed on me. "I saw your bank papers last year," he said. "When you were hospitalized, you left them out. You shouldn't have. I didn't know you had that much saved." My voice sounded small. "How much do you think I have?" "A couple $100,000, he said with a shrug. "Maybe more. I know there's something else too, a trust or something. I've seen hints of it." My heart skipped a beat. A trust. An old buried memory surfaced. My mother's letter, the one she wrote me years ago, telling me there were things I'd understand when the time was right. I had never understood what she meant, until now. Evan went on, his tone sharpening. "I have debts, Mum, serious ones. You're sitting on money you don't even use. You're old. What do you need it for?" "I have a family. I have responsibilities." "Responsibilities?" I whispered. "Your children are in the hospital because of you." He winced, not with guilt, but irritation. "It wasn't supposed to be like that. I thought you'd eat them right away." "You always eat chocolates when I send them." Something inside me broke. "You planned it." He didn't deny it. Iris covered her mouth with her hands, tears spilling down her cheeks. Evan ran a hand through his hair, frustration rolling off him in waves. I was desperate, okay? It was the only way. If you were gone, everything would be easier. I'd inherit what I'm owed. Owed? My voice trembled. You think you're owed my life? He looked me straight in the eye. You've lived yours. I need to live mine. The room felt cold, smaller, airless. I stared at my son, boy I adopted, the child I loved more fiercely than anything in this world, and saw nothing left of the person I thought he was, not even a shadow. Iris tried again to intervene. Evan, please stop. This isn't you. Yes, it is, he snapped. You've babied me my whole life. You covered for me every time I messed up. You always defended me. And look how she repays me, by holding money she doesn't even need. His words cut deeper than any knife. So you thought killing me was the answer? I whispered. It would have been clean, he said. No mess, no suspicion. I swallowed hard. And the kids? He exhaled sharply, impatience flashing across his face. That was an accident. I didn't think you'd give them away. I calculated the risk. It wasn't supposed to happen. A calculated risk. My grandchildren, my sweet, innocent grandchildren, had been a risk. I stepped back, feeling the final thread between us snap. This is over, I said. Do not contact me again. Evan stood abruptly, anger igniting. You think you can just walk away from me? You think you get to decide how this ends? I turned toward the door. I already did. His voice rose behind me. You're still my mother. You owe me something? I didn't turn around. I didn't answer. I walked out of the house and closed the door behind me. The sky had begun to drizzle, cold drops hitting my face as I reached my car. I sat behind the wheel, gripping it so hard my fingers ached. Evan had tried to kill me, and now that he knew I understood the truth, I wasn't sure what he would do next, but something deep in my chest stirred, something that had been quiet for too many years. Resolve. I was done being afraid of my own child. The next chapter of this story would not be written by him. It would be written by me. The drive home from Iris's house felt longer than any road I had ever taken. Every streetlight looked dimmer, every passing face unfamiliar. My hands wouldn't stop shaking on the steering wheel. I had walked into that house, hoping, begging for my son to deny what I already feared. Instead, he had confirmed it with a calmness that still made my skin crawl. By the time I stepped inside my apartment, the silence pressed against my ears. I set my purse down on the kitchen counter, but my legs felt weak, as if they weren't quite part of my body anymore. I lowered myself into the nearest chair. The envelope with the anonymous screenshot, Evan's call log, still sat in the drawer where I had tucked it the night before. I pulled it out slowly, staring again at the repeated late-night calls from that strange number. 10:32 p.m. Every night for weeks. And then multiple calls right before he asked me about the chocolates. Who was he talking to? And why would someone want me to know? I ran my fingers over the edges of the page, thinking back to the moment at Iris's house when Evan mentioned a trust, something he believed I knew about, a trust my mother had left hints of before she passed. I hadn't thought about that letter in years. I stood up and walked to my bedroom closet, reaching for the old wooden chest where I kept keepsakes I rarely looked at. Birth certificates, faded photographs, the brittle paper drawings Evan made as a child, hospital wristbands, cards he gave me on Mother's Day when he was still sweet. Buried beneath all of it was the letter. The envelope had yellowed with age. My mother's delicate handwriting spelled my name the way she always wrote it. Soft loops, careful curves. I sat on the bed and gently opened it. My dear Mara, if you are reading this, I want you to remember something you often forget. Kindness must have boundaries. There are things in our family you will understand when the eye is right. I hope you will use what is left for you wisely and protect yourself from those who mistake your generosity for weakness. Love, Mom. There had been no explanation of what she meant, no mention of a trust. At the time, I assumed she meant emotional boundaries, something she often spoke of but rarely practiced herself. Now, reading it again, I felt a tightness in my chest. What had she left me? And how had Evan discovered it before I ever did? I placed the letter gently back inside the chest. My mind spun as I walked back into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My reflection in the microwave door looked unfamiliar, tired, frightened, and something else I hadn't expected. Determined. My phone rang, making me jump. The sound echoed sharply in the quiet apartment. It was Lena. I answered immediately. How are they?
They're okay, she said. The doctors want to keep them one more day, but they're stable.
Relief flooded through me so quickly it hurt. And Evan? She asked cautiously. I hesitated. Then I said the truth. I confronted him. Her breath caught. And? He didn't deny it. My voice cracked softly. Not one part of it. There was a long silence on the other end. Mara, she finally whispered, I'm so sorry. I know things between us haven't always been easy, but what he did, it's unforgivable. Her sincerity surprised me. For years, Lena had kept a polite distance around me, but now her voice held something completely understanding. Mara, she continued, there's something else. The doctors said the compound they found, it doesn't show up in normal cases. It's not some random toxin. Someone had to put it there deliberately. I know, I said softly, I know exactly who. She didn't argue. After we hung up, I set the phone down and leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I needed help. I needed someone who could guide me through the legal and financial labyrinth that Evan was counting on me not to understand. So I called the only person I trusted with those things, Victor. He had been my lawyer for years, handling wills, small claims, harmless documents. When his familiar, steady voice answered the phone, something inside me finally loosened. Mara, he said gently, you sound shaken. What's happened? I told him everything. My words shook at first, but once I started, I couldn't stop. The chocolates, the hospital, Evan's confession, the call log, the mysterious text. When I finished, there was silence on the line. Then Victor said, Mara, you need protection, and we need evidence. I have some, I whispered. His words, the way he said things, that won't be enough. His voice held the calm firmness of someone who had seen too many families break apart. We'll need proof, solid proof, proof. A sharp, cold thought flickered through me. The conversation with Evan at Iris's house. I looked at my purse, then at the small black device attached to the inner pocket. I had forgotten all about it. A digital recorder. I bought it months ago after a financial advisor warned me to document confusing conversations. I never imagined it would hold something like that. I grabbed my purse, unzipped the side pocket, and pressed the playback button. And there it was, Evan's voice. Every cold sentence, every justification, every admission. I heard it all again. If you were gone, everything would be easier. You've lived your life. I need to live mine. It would have been clean, no suspicion. Victor listened with me in silence. When the recording ended, he finally spoke. Mara, this is enough to start a case. I exhaled shakily. I don't want him arrested yet, not until I protect the kids, not until I understand everything he's been hiding. Victor paused. All right, then we proceed carefully. I'll start the paperwork quietly, and you, Mara, don't go near him again. I promised I wouldn't. After the call, I stood in the middle of my kitchen, staring at nothing, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the street below. People walked on their way to late lunches or errands, unaware that the life of a woman 3 floors above them had just cracked open. I had spent decades shrinking myself, softening my voice, making myself smaller so Evan wouldn't feel threatened or burdened. But now someone had tried to take my life, and that someone was the child I raised. Fear had been my companion for too long. It was time to choose someone else. Strength. I didn't know exactly what the next steps would be, but I knew this much. I would never be the same woman again. And Evan was about to learn what it meant when a mother finally stopped protecting her son. The next morning, I woke with a strange, heavy clarity, a kind of exhaustion that didn't weaken me, just sharpened me. It was the feeling that comes after a storm destroys everything you thought was unbreakable and you finally see the land underneath. I brewed a cup of coffee I barely tasted and sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the pale morning light. My hand still trembled when I thought about the recording. Evan's voice replayed in my mind like a shadow I couldn't turn away from. But beneath the fear, something else had taken root. Resolve. Victor called shortly after 8. "Mara," he said, his voice steady. I listened to the recording again. It's strong, very strong. But before we move forward, I need you somewhere safe, away from your home. "I'm fine," I insisted. "No," he said firmly, "you're not. If Evan panics, if he realizes you have evidence or suspects you might, he could try something else. I won't take that risk with you." I closed my eyes. Where would I go? "I'll arrange a place," he said. "A secure apartment, short-term lease. You'll have privacy and he won't know where to find you." A memory surfaced, Evan's voice at Iris's house, furious that I had walked away. "You think you get to decide how this ends?" Victor was right. "I'll go," I whispered. By noon he had everything arranged, a modern apartment on the east side of the city, a building with cameras, a second-floor unit with a balcony, clean lines and quiet hallways. Not extravagant, just safe. I packed lightly, just clothes, toiletries, and the wooden chest with my mother's letter tucked inside. When I locked the door to my old apartment, my hand lingered on the knob. That home had held my life for years. Birthdays, holidays, quiet mornings, loud arguments, all the memories of raising Evan. But now it felt like a place someone else lived in. I walked away without looking back. The new apartment felt almost too clean, too fresh. The kind of place meant for someone rebuilding their lives. Victor met me there with a folder. "I've hired someone," he said as he set it on the counter. "Who?" "A private investigator. His name is Joel. Former law enforcement, discreet, experienced with family cases." Family cases. The phrase made my stomach twist. "What will he do?" I asked. Victor opened the folder, find out everything, Evan's debts, his contacts, his behavior over the past months, and most importantly, he tapped a page in the file. That number. The late night number. The one someone warned me about. "We have to know who's on the other end," Victor said. If Evan was planning something, he wasn't doing it alone. A chill moved through me. I nodded. Victor placed a small, sleek phone beside the folder. "Use this instead of your regular number. Only I and Joel have this one. If Evan tries to reach you, ignore it. If he shows up anywhere, you call me immediately." I agreed. After Victor left, the apartment felt too quiet again, but not the suffocating kind, more like a pause before a step forward. I unpacked slowly, placing my things in new drawers, hanging a few clothes, trying to make the space feel like mine. Around 4 in the afternoon, there was a knock on the door. I hesitated, heart pounding before I remembered Victor's words. "It's Joel," a calm male voice called. "Your attorney sent me." I opened the door. He was tall, silver-haired, with the composed look of someone who had seen too much and learned not to show it. He carried a small notepad and a leather satchel. "Mrs. Mara," he said, extending his hand. "I'm here to help." His tone wasn't warm, but it was reassuring. I let him in. He sat at the table, took out his notepad. "I need you to tell me everything from your perspective, and then I'll explain what we've found so far." So I did. I recounted the chocolates, Evan's call, the hospital, the confrontation at Iris's house, the recording, the anonymous text, the strange calls at 42 p.m. He didn't interrupt, didn't ask unnecessary questions, just wrote. When I finished, he flipped to another page. We've traced the late-night number, he said. My breath caught. Who is it? He hesitated, not for effect, because he wanted to choose the right words. It belongs to a man named Calder, known for running high-stakes underground gambling rings. If someone owes money, he calls frequently, and he's persistent. I felt sick. Evan owes him a considerable amount, Joel continued, and not just from this year. We're still investigating how deep it goes, but it's significant. I pressed a hand to my mouth. And that's not all, he added. My heart sank. What else? Joel slid a second page across the table, a transaction record, from Iris to Evan, regular transfers for months, sometimes a few hundred, sometimes thousands. My chest tightened painfully. He's been taking money from her. Joel nodded. More than she realizes, I suspect. We'll confirm everything. I clenched my jaw. Iris, who had always believed Evan could do no wrong. Iris, who had defended him all his life. He had taken advantage of her too. Joel continued. There's also something strange. Calder's calls increased dramatically about 6 weeks ago. That seems to be the point where Evan became desperate. And desperation. He paused. Leads people to make reckless choices. Choices like killing their mother. I looked down at my hands, surprised at how steady they seemed. I want the full picture, I said. Everything he's done. Everything he's hiding. You'll have it, Joel assured me. And when we're ready, you'll be protected. Legally and physically. After he left, I stepped out onto the balcony. The evening air was cool, faintly scented with city jasmine from the nearby gardens. The soft hum of traffic drifted up from the street. For the first time in days, I felt the slightest breeze of calm. Evan had built an entire world on lies and debts and manipulation. And now, for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to look away from the truth. I wasn't the woman he thought I was anymore. I leaned against the railing, watching the city lights flicker on. This was the beginning. The part where I stopped being afraid and started becoming something Evan never prepared himself for. Someone who could fight back. Over the next week, life in the new apartment settled into a strange rhythm. Quiet mornings, afternoons spent speaking with Victor or Joel, and long nights in which sleep came in thin, restless fragments. I checked my old phone occasionally, though I never answered Evan's calls. Each missed call felt like a reminder of a world I had stepped out of but hadn't fully escaped. Joel visited every other day with updates. Each time he arrived, he carried a little more truth with him. Truth that chipped away at the mother inside me and forced me to look at my son as something else entirely. By the middle of the week, he had uncovered more details about Evan's gambling debts. Calder, the man behind the calls, was known for his brutal methods of collecting. According to Joel, Calder didn't tolerate late payments, and Evan was months, maybe years behind. What does Calder want from him now? I asked. Money, Joel replied simply. Large amounts, and quickly. And Evan thought killing me would solve that. Joel didn't soften his expression. It would have cleared his debts, or at least bought him time. I nodded slowly, letting that sink in. It was one thing to know your son had become reckless, another to know he had become capable of plotting your murder. On Thursday, Victor called with a different kind of update. Mara, he said, I need you to attend an event this weekend. An event? Yes, a gallery showing, public, safe, controlled environment. This is the perfect opportunity to make your first appearance since everything happened. I blinked. Why? What purpose would that serve? Victor exhaled, as if choosing his words. Optics matter. Evan believes you're hiding, afraid, maybe even willing to back down. Seeing you confident, composed, in a public place, it will shift the balance. People talk, and eventually he will hear those talks. I hesitated. Me? At an art gallery? Most of my life had been quiet routines, Grocery stores, family dinners, simple lunches with a friend or two. I wasn't someone who made appearances. Victor continued, "You won't go alone. I'll be there. Joel will be nearby. Nothing will happen to you. But being seen will show strength." Strength. That word had taken on a new meaning in my life lately. "I'll go," I said. The night of the gallery came quicker than I expected. I stood in front of the mirror in the apartment's bathroom wearing a navy blouse and a soft cream jacket. I added a necklace I hadn't worn in years, small pearls my mother gave me when Evan first started school. I looked composed. Older, yes, but steadier than I had felt in a long time. Victor picked me up and we drove to the gallery on the east side of the city. The building looked elegant, all glass and soft lights. Inside, people drifted between large abstract paintings, holding wine glasses and murmuring about color, shape, and intention. I felt out of place at first, standing near a painting of blue streaks on white canvas. But the longer I stood there, the more comfortable I felt. The room was warm, the lighting gentle. Victor touched my arm. "You're doing well," he whispered. I nodded. But then, as I turned my head, I froze. Across the room, standing under a gold-toned spotlight near a sculpture, was Lena. She wore a simple black dress and held a glass of sparkling water. Her face looked calm but watchful. And beside her, my stomach twisted, was Evan. His appearance had changed. His hair was unkempt, his eyes darting around the room as if expected someone to jump out of the shadows. He looked thinner, almost gaunt. He hadn't seen me yet, but Lena had. Our eyes met, and something softened in her expression. She gave a small, almost invisible nod, as if telling me to hold steady. Then Evan turned. The moment his eyes landed on me, his entire face changed. First confusion, then shock, then anger. He stepped forward, his voice barely contained. "Mum?" Victor moved subtly but firmly beside me, ready. I kept my chin lifted. "Hello, Evan." His eyes scanned my appearance, my clothes, my posture, the confidence I didn't have just a week ago. He looked rattled. "You shouldn't be here," he hissed. "Why not?" I asked calmly. His voice cracked. "You're supposed to be resting, staying out of things." "Why?" I asked again. He swallowed hard, glancing quickly around the room, noticing the eyes turning toward us. People were already sensing the tension. Some whispered. Lena approached, standing a bit behind him. Her presence was quiet, but firm. "Evan," she said softly, "lower your voice." He ignored her. "Why are you acting like thee?" he demanded. "Why are you alive?" I said. His mouth snapped shut. A visible tremor passed through him. Lena inhaled sharply. Victor stepped closer. "Evan, this is not the place. You should take a step back." But Evan shook his head slowly, disbelief clouding his eyes. "I don't understand. You should be afraid of me." There it was, the truth behind his expression. He expected fear. He needed fear. But the woman standing before him wasn't the one he tried to poison. "I'm not afraid anymore," I said softly. He stared at me, speechless. I added, "And I'm not hiding." People were watching now, gallery guests, staff, passers-by. Evan noticed them too, his face flushed with embarrassment and rage. "You don't know what you're talking about," he muttered. But fear flickered beneath his words. Lena stepped forward, her voice steady. "Evan, let's go." He jerked away from her touch. Then he glared at me one last time, but this time the fury was mixed with something else. Uncertainty. He left the gallery in quick, clipped steps, pushing past a couple near the door. Lena remained for a moment, her eyes meeting mine. She mouthed two silent words, "Thank you." Then she followed after him. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Victor placed a hand on my shoulder. "Mara," he he said softly. He's losing control, and he knows you aren't anymore. I stood there in the warm glow of the gallery lights, surrounded by strangers and quiet paintings. For the first time, I felt the shift, not just outside, inside me. Evan's power over me had cracked tonight, not completely, not yet, but the break had started. And once something cracks, it can never be made invisible again. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains in my new apartment, soft and pale, as if careful not to disturb me. But sleep had been thin, broken into restless fragments. My mind replayed the moment at the gallery again and again. Evan's shock, his trembling anger, the disbelief in his eyes when he realized I wasn't afraid of him. He had seen something he wasn't prepared for. Strength. Around 9, my phone buzzed. The secure one Victor had given me. I answered quickly. "Hello, Mara, it's Lena." Her voice was quiet but steady. A small part of me clenched. We had never spoken casually, not in all the years she'd been with Evan. But ever since the poisoning, something in her had shifted. "I didn't wake you, did I?" she asked. "No," I said. "I've been up." She exhaled shakily. "I saw how calm you were last night. I don't think Evan has ever seen you like that." "Neither have I admitted. A beat of silence followed. Then Lena asked, "Can we meet?" "Just the two of us?" My pulse quickened. "Where?" "There's a small cafe near the hospital," she said. "They have a private corner booth. I'll text you the address." I hesitated. Evan was unpredictable, dangerous. Meeting Lena could expose her to trouble she didn't need. But something in her voice told me this wasn't casual. She needed to tell me something. "I'll come," I said. The cafe was quiet, washed in warm beige tones and the smell of fresh pastries. Soft music hummed from overhead speakers. Lena sat in the back booth, hands wrapped around a mug of tea. When she saw me, she stood. "Mara," she said, her voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. I slid into the booth across from her. For a moment she didn't speak. Her eyes were red-rimmed but focused. Finally she whispered, "I'm sorry." I blinked. For what? For everything I didn't see, everything I ignored, everything I excused. She swallowed. Evan has always had two sides. I thought, if I was patient enough, kind enough, he would settle. I said nothing. There were no easy words to give her. She glanced around the cafe, then leaned closer. "There's something I haven't told you," she said. "Something I found a few weeks ago." I felt the air shift. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. When she handed it to me, her hand trembled. I unfolded it slowly. A photograph of a small metal safe. Inside it, documents, bank slips, handwritten notes, a list of numbers, Evan's handwriting. "What is this?" I whispered. Lena wet her lips. "I found the safe hidden behind a false panel in our closet." My heart thudded. "When?" "About a month ago." I didn't say anything because I didn't fully understand what I was looking at. She pointed at one of the slips in the photo. "This one has your name." I leaned in. There it was. My name. Next to the words expected access and a dollar amount, and beneath that, a date. The date of my birthday. The day the chocolates arrived. My breath caught. Lena continued, "I didn't know what he meant by expected access, but after what happened, I think I do." My hands shook as I touched the paper. "He planned it," she whispered. "He planned the exact day, the timing, everything." A cold wave rolled through me. "This document here," she slid her finger to another part of the photo, mentioned a trust. Something about unlocking disbursement. I didn't understand it, but the handwriting, it looked like calculations. My mother's letter echoed in my mind. "There are things in our family you will understand when the time is right." I set the photo down, the cafe suddenly feeling too small, too quiet. "Why are you showing me that now?" I asked. "Because I can't keep protecting him," she said softly. "Not after what he did, not after what he tried to do." Her eyes brimmed. "And because you deserve to know everything." I exhaled, heavy and shaking. "Lena, I know things have been difficult between us, but you never owed me protection. You never had to defend me." She looked down at her tea. "I should have noticed the signs sooner. He was agitated all the time, irritable, secretive. I assumed it was stress, work, bills, because that's what he told you." "Yes." Her jaw tightened, "but now I know better." The server brought her a fresh pot of tea. She didn't touch it. She looked at me again. "There's something else." My chest tensed. She reached into her bag once more and pulled out a small, square audio device. "I recorded something too," she whispered. "A fight we had. I didn't mean to at first. I was trying to save a voice memo, but the phone captured the whole conversation." She pushed the device toward me. "You should listen to it." My fingers hovered over it. "What is it?" I asked. "Proof," she said softly, "that you were never his only target." A cold, sharp dread spread through my chest. Lena continued, "Evan wasn't just planning something for you. He talked about Iris too. He thought she'd outlive you, and he didn't want her to get anything before him." I felt the blood drain from my face. Iris, my sister. He had been planning things for both of us. I gripped the device with trembling hands. "Mara," Lena said gently, "I know this is a lot, but if we're going to protect the children, if we're going to stop him, we need the whole truth. All of it." I nodded slowly, because she was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. Not about the chocolates. Not about debts. Not even about the trust. It was about a man who had decided he deserved everything, and anyone who stood between him and what he wanted became disposable. A man I had raised. When we left the cafe, Lena hugged me. It was the first time she ever had. Her voice shook as she whispered, "You're not alone in this anymore." As she stepped back, I realized something quietly devastating. Evan wasn't losing control. He had never truly had it. And now that the truth was unraveling, neither she nor I could pretend otherwise. I clutched the audio device in my hand as I walked back to my car. Another piece of the truth. Another step toward what was coming. And another reason Evan would soon fear the mother he tried to bury. When I returned to the apartment, I set the audio device on the kitchen counter and stared at it as though it might move on its own. The air in the room felt heavier than before, carrying the weight of everything Lena had revealed. My hands trembled slightly when I reached for a glass of water. Evan had not only planned to kill me, he had thought about Iris too. The thought lodged in my ribs like a shard of glass. For a long moment I didn't press play. I simply stood there, reminding myself to breathe, reminding myself that truth, no matter how painful, was still better than ignorance. Finally, I turned the device on. Lena's voice came first, shaken but steady. "You can't keep doing that, Evan. You're scaring me." Then Evan's voice erupted in the small kitchen, dripping with frustration. "Everything would be fine if people stopped getting in my way?" Lena's voice softened. "Who? Who's in your way?" A pause, then his voice again, low and cold. "Mum and Iris. They're holding things that should be mine." My heart dropped. "They're old," he continued. "They don't need all that money. I have a family. I have a future. They're wasting it." Lena's voice broke. "Evan, what are you thinking?" Another pause, long and uneasy. Then he said something I would never forget. "I'm thinking I'm tired of waiting." The recording clicked off. I stood there in silence, staring at the smooth countertop, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. So it wasn't only me. It was never just me's. Evan had been spiraling much further than I realized, his desperation reaching beyond anything I could have imagined. Iris, who had loved him unconditionally, who had supported him blindly, who had defended him against every criticism, he had counted her as expendable too. I gripped the counter until my fingers ached. When my breathing steadied, I called Victor. He arrived within half an hour, Joel right behind him. I played the recording again while they listened without interruption. When it ended, Victor exhaled slowly. This changes things. Joel's expression hardened. He's escalating. This isn't just greed, this is entitlement with no boundaries. I swallowed. What do we do now? Victor opened his briefcase. We file motions immediately. We secure your accounts, lock down any access he might attempt. And we begin procedures for a restraining order, not just for you, but for Iris as well. Joel added, and I'll expand my investigation. I need to know how long he's been planning this, who else he's been involved with. Calder is one threat, your son is another. My heart twisted painfully at the word, your son. After Victor left, Joel lingered at the door. Mara, he said quiet. I've seen cases like that before. Not exactly like that, but similar. The moment a person feels cornered, when they realize their plans are falling apart, they become volatile. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. You mean dangerous? Yes, he said simply. More dangerous than before. The next day, the storm truly began. It started with a phone call from Iris. Mara, she said, her voice frantic. Something's wrong with my bank account. My stomach clenched. What happened? I went to pay my utility bill. They said my account showed multiple large withdrawals I never made. Thousands. I closed my eyes. Iris, I think Evan has been taking money from you, she gasped, soft, wounded. But why would... Because he could, I said gently. Because you trusted him. Her breathing grew shaky. I need to see you. I told her to come to the new apartment. When she arrived, her face was pale, her hands trembling. I explained everything, Evan's debt, the poisoning, the recording Lena gave me. By the end, Iris covered her face with both hands and sobbed quietly. How did I not see it? She whispered. Because you loved him, I said softly. And you believed the best of him, the same way I did. She lifted her head, tears streaking down her cheeks. We have to protect ourselves, all of her. And that's when Joel arrived with news. We found more, he said, setting a thick folder on the table. Inside were printouts, bank statements, loan agreements, credit card charges. Evan hadn't been drowning in debt. He had already drowned. He owed Calder more than I ever imagined, far beyond what he could repay. And in the last few weeks he had been transferring money between accounts illegally, pulling funds from Iris's savings and even attempting to access one of my older investment accounts. Victor arrived soon after, and together we processed everything. Mara, he said, your financial safety is compromised. We're freezing all accounts today. All of them. And we're notifying the authorities quietly. I nodded. And Iris, he added, turning to her, we can recover what he took. It will take time, but it's possible. Iris nodded, wiping tears. Joel then set down another paper, a list. These, he said, are the last locations Evan visited based on his phone GPS. My eyes scanned the list. Cafes, grocery stores, and one entry that made my blood run cold. Calder's address. He met him? I whispered. Joel nodded. 2 nights ago. We don't know what happened inside, but Calder's men aren't patient. Evan is on borrowed time now. The realization settled slowly. Evan wasn't just dangerous to us, he was desperate. and desperate people make reckless choices. Victor closed the folder. Mara, this is the part where we move from gathering information to taking action. You need legal protection, and Lena and the kids do too. I nodded quietly. What happens now? I asked. Victor looked directly at me. Now, he said, we fight back. Fully. That evening, after Joel and Victor left, the apartment felt heavier than ever. I stepped out onto the balcony, the cool night air brushing against my skin. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of everything. My son had tried to kill me. He had planned to take from Iris. He had racked up debts that followed him like shadows. He had been meeting dangerous people. The world I built for him, life I sacrificed for, had been reshaped into something unrecognizable. But there was something else too. I wasn't standing alone. Lena had stepped forward. Victor was fighting for me. Joel was uncovering every truth. Iris was finally seeing clearly, and I was changing. Slowly, quietly, but undeniably. I realized as I stood there watching the city lights blink awake that this was the moment the story shifted again, not because of what Evan had done, but because of what I was finally willing to do. I would no longer be the mother who excused him, not the woman who softened every blow, not the one who stayed silent. He had taken everything for granted, but now, for the first time in my life, the consequences were coming. And this time, they had my name on them. 3 days passed in a blur of legal motions, quiet conversations, and the constant hum of tension beneath every breath I took. Victor worked tirelessly, filing protective orders and securing every account linked to my name. Iris spent long hours in my apartment, shaken but steady, as Joel guided her through reports of the money Evan had siphoned from her over the past year. By the 4th morning, the emotional exhaustion settled into my bones. I made a cup of tea and sat on the balcony, letting the cool air brush against my skin. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe things were stabilizing. Then everything unraveled again. It started with a text from Lena. We need to talk. Right now. My chest tightened. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring, breathless. Mara, have you seen it? Seen what? The live stream. I froze. What live stream? There was a long, shaky exhale. Evan. He went live online. He's saying things about you, about me, about the kids. He's unraveling, and people are watching. My stomach dropped. I'll send you the link, she said. Within seconds, my phone buzzed with a notification. I clicked the link, and Evan's face appeared on the screen. He was broadcasting from what looked like a dim motel room, curtains drawn, a messy bed behind him, harsh yellow light flickering above. His hair was disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed and wild. He stared into the camera with a jittery anger. Everyone listening, he began, voice trembling. My mother is trying to destroy me. She's lying about everything, all of it. My throat tightened. He continued. She's making up stories about poisoning, about debts. She wants attention. Sympathy. She's always been like that. Hundreds of comments scrolled up the screen. Most weren't buying it. Why would you own kids end up in the hospital then? Dude looks guilty as hell. Where's the evidence? Evan's jaw tightened as he read them. You don't understand, he snapped at the screen. She twists everything. She manipulates everyone. He broke off, running a hand down his face. I'm the real victim here. Another comment flashed. If you're innocent, show proof. Release texts, recordings, anything. Evan barked a humorless laugh. She's the one with recordings. She's the one twisting them. I never tried to hurt anyone. My hands shook. Not with fear, but with a strange mix of sadness and disbelief. He was spiraling. Then he leaned closer to the camera, whispering harshly, You don't know what kind of person she is. You don't know what she's hiding. She has money she didn't tell anyone about, a trust that should have come to our family. She's been hoarding it, keeping everything for herself. My breath caught. He was talking about the trust, the one I didn't even know existed. The comments section exploded. So now you'll say she has money you want? Why do you care so much about her inheritance? Bro, you're confessing without realizing. Evan's face reddened. That's not what I meant, he shouted. She owes me. She raised me, fine, but she kept things from me, things she had no right to keep. More comments. You're making it worse. This is unhinged. Some were cruel. This guy 100% poisoned his mom. Evan slammed his fist on the table. Shut up. You don't get it. You don't. The screen jolted, and he moved closer, his face filling the frame. If she tries to take me down, I'll take her down with me. My heart stopped. That was a threat. A recorded threat. Then, abruptly, the live stream went dark. I sat frozen, my phone still in my hand, the room spinning slightly. Within minutes, Victor called. Mara, he said urgently. I saw the live stream. So did I. We need to escalate the case. This is public harassment, defamation, and a threat. This helps us. He just incriminated himself in front of thousands of people. I closed my eyes. Victor, I don't want this to get uglier. It already has. And there's something else. What? Reporters are calling. The video is trending. People want your side of the story. My heart pounded. Mine? Yes. And Mara, this is an opportunity. For what? To tell the truth before Evan destroys it. If you stay silent, he controls the narrative. If you speak, the world hears your voice, your real voice. I didn't respond. He continued, I've arranged an interview, a reputable journalist from a major channel. You won't be ambushed, you'll be protected. You don't have to attack Evan, just tell the truth. Truth. My entire life, truth had been something I handled gently, quietly, like a fragile ornament. But now, truth had become a weapon, one I never intended to hold, but one that was suddenly necessary. Finally, I said, I'll do it. The interview was scheduled for the following morning. I wore a soft grey blouse and tied my hair back loosely. When the camera crew arrived, Victor stood beside me while they set up lights in the living room. The journalist, a calm woman with warm eyes, shook my hand. Mrs. Mara, I know this is difficult. We'll go slowly. Speak when you're ready. When the cameras rolled, she asked the first question. Can you tell us, in your own words, what happened? I inhaled slowly, and I told everything. The chocolates, the hospital, Evan's reaction, his confession, the threats, the debts, the trust I never knew existed. I didn't embellish, didn't dramatize, didn't soften. When I finished, the journalist asked, and how does a mother feel learning that her own son may have tried to harm her? A long pause stretched between us. I finally said, she feels heartbreak and clarity. The journalist nodded gently. And what do you want now? I want safety, I said. For myself, for my sister, for my daughter-in-law, and especially for my grandchildren. And I want the truth to be seen for what it is. When the interview ended, the crew thanked me. Victor placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You did perfectly, he said. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exposed. Still, it had been the right choice. The interview aired that evening. Within an hour, it spread across every platform, news sites, social media, community pages. Messages began pouring in, hundreds of strangers, some expressing sympathy, some sharing that they had survived toxic children too, some offering support. But the most unexpected messages came from people who knew Evan. Old classmates, co-workers, acquaintances. I'm not surprised. He always had a temper. He manipulated a lot of people. Bit by bit, the world was seeing the truth. And Evan was unraveling in public. Joel arrived late that night with new information. His motel charged him for damages. He broke a lamp, yelled at staff. He's running out of money, out of options. Victor added, his outburst online has given us significant leverage in court. Judges pay attention to this kind of instability. This helps secure the protective orders faster. Yet even with all the progress, I couldn't shake one fear. Cornered animals lash out, and my son was as cornered as I had ever seen him. As I lay in bed that night, the glow of the city seeping through the curtains, one truth echoed louder than all the others. This wasn't the climax of the storm. It was only the warning. The real confrontation was still ahead. The morning after the interview aired, the world outside my window felt strangely quiet. Too quiet for the kind of chaos unfolding beneath its surface. I stepped onto the balcony with a cup of warm coffee, letting the cool breeze brush against my skin. For a moment, I simply breathed, trying to steady myself. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Victor. Big developments. Call me when you're awake. I called immediately. Mara, he said, without even a greeting. Everything has accelerated. The authorities saw the interview. So did the district attorney's office. My heart tightened. What does that mean? It means they want to move forward with criminal charges. Attempted murder, financial exploitation, endangerment of minors. Recording and the live stream provide substantial evidence. The words felt heavy, almost unreal. So soon? He sighed. Evan forced their hand. His behavior is escalating and his public meltdown shows instability. They concerned he may attempt to flee or, worse, try to hurt you again. I wrapped my free arm around myself. Has he done anything else? Yes, Victor said. He checked out of the motel last night, without paying. He disappeared before staff could report him. No one knows where he is right now. A shiver moved through me. Joel is tracking him, Victor assured me. You're safe here. But Mara, be careful, don't go anywhere alone. I understand, I whispered. We have a meeting later today, he added. The DA wants your statement. I agreed, though part of me felt numb. After the call ended, I stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at nothing. I once knew Evan's patterns, his habits, his moods, his excuses. I used to anticipate where he might go, what he might do. But this version of him, this desperate, unraveling man, I no longer recognized. Before I could spiral too far into thought, the secure phone rang again. This time it was Joel. We found him, he said. Where? In a rental car near Calder's neighborhood. He was parked there for an hour before leaving. My breath hitched. Is he meeting him again? We don't know, Joel said. But Calder will not wait forever for repayment. Evan's pressure is mounting from both sides. That makes him unpredictable. He hesitated. There's more, Mara. Someone witnessed him arguing with Calder's men outside a pawn shop. Fear prickled along my skin. What were they arguing about? Money. Deadlines. And your name came up. I gripped the edge of the counter. Mine. Yes. Calder's men mentioned you. Evan said something like, she ruined everything. A chill moved down my spine. Joel quickly reassured me. We've already increased security around the building. You're safe. But you need to be prepared. When people spiral this fast, they lash out unpredictably. I thanked him and hung up, the weight of the situation settling deeper inside me. Later that morning, Victor arrived to drive me to the DA's office. The building was tall, sterile, and buzzing with the kind of purposeful quiet that comes from people dealing with too many tragedies in a day. Inside a private conference room, the district attorney herself greeted me, a sharp-eyed woman with a calm presence. Mrs. Mara, she said, shaking my hand. Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy. I nodded. She continued, your case is serious. and your son's actions, both online and off, display escalating behavior. To move forward, we need a full, official statement from you. So I gave it. Every detail, every moment, every word from Evan's confession. The DA listened intently, occasionally jotting notes. When I finished, she folded her hands. "We will pursue charges," she said. "We'll begin with attempted murder. Given the recording, the poisoning of minors, and the live stream threats, we have a strong case." Part of me felt hollow hearing it. Another part that remembered Evan's cold voice say, "It would have been clean," felt something else. Relief. The DA continued, "We will also be issuing a warrant for his arrest. As soon as law enforcement locates him, he will be taken into custody." I exhaled shakily. "Thank you." As Victor and I left the building, he placed a hand on my arm. "You did the right thing." But as we drove back to the apartment, my thoughts drifted to a time long ago, Evan at 6 years old, holding my hand at the zoo, excitedly pointing at animals. Evan at 10, bringing home a drawing he made of her. Evan at 15, hurting but still reachable. What had happened to that boy? When had he become that? When we reached the apartment, Joel was waiting outside. His expression was grim. "We have a problem," he said. My stomach tightened. What happened? "A reporter found Evan." Victor's brows knitted. "Where?" "A cheap diner on the outskirts of the city." Evan agreed to talk. "He gave an interview." My pulse quickened. "What did he say?" Joel glanced at me with the kind of empathy seasoned investigators learn to show without pity. "He said you're framing him." My breath caught. "He said you're mentally unstable, that you're fabricating everything, that you're upset he doesn't visit you often and you're trying to destroy his life." A strange numbness washed over me. "He also told the reporter," Joel said, "that if you keep this up, he won't be responsible for what happens next." A direct threat. "On record," Victor muttered. "He's digging his own grave." But I could barely hear them. A ringing filled my ears. For so many years I've carried guilt like a second skin, wondering what I could have done differently, how I could have loved him better, how I could have prevented the darkness that grew inside him. But now I understood something painfully clear. There was no version of me, no version of motherhood that would have saved Evan from himself. And as that truth settled into my bones, something inside me hardened. Something old, something tired, something that had spent too many years breaking. I lifted my head. "What happens next?" I asked. Joel glanced at Victor. Victor said, "Next. A warrant goes out, and when they find him, there will be a trial." A trial. The word felt enormous. "You'll have to testify," Joel added gently. I nodded slowly. "I know. And Lena will too," Victor said, "and Iris, and the doctors, and the toxicology team." My throat tightened. "How long until they find him?" Joel hesitated. "It could be hours, it could be days, but we'll find him. He's running out of money, out of allies, and he's scared. Scared of me, of the consequences, of the truth." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the ground under me steady. Not because justice was guaranteed, but because I finally understood myself. I was not powerless. I was not fragile. I was not the weak woman Evan believed he could erase. I looked at Victor and Joel, then at the quiet hallway behind them. "Let him run," I said softly. "Let him try." Because now, for the first time, he was the one being hunted. And the truth, my truth, was no longer something he could bury. It was something he would have to face under the weight of the law, and under the weight of the mother he underestimated for far too long. 2 days passed after the arrest warrant was issued, each hour weighed down by a tension that never left my chest. I tried to keep busy, organizing drawers in the apartment, watering the small potted plant Victor had bought me the day I moved in, rereading my mother's letter. But my mind always drifted back to the same thought. Where was Evan? Joel checked in constantly, sometimes with updates, sometimes simply to assure me he was watching. Each report was the same. Evan was moving unpredictably. He'd been spotted withdrawing small amounts of cash at different ATMs, then disappearing again. A neighbor had seen him pacing outside his old house, but by the time officers arrived, he was gone. He was slipping through places connected to memories, as if he couldn't bear to let go of the life he had already burned. On the third morning, a soft knock sounded on my door. When I opened it, Lena stood there. Her eyes were tired, but her posture was firm. "We need to talk," she said quietly. I stepped aside. "Come in." She sat at the kitchen table, smoothing her hands along the edge of her sweater. I poured her some tea, and she held the warm cup between her palms. "The kids are doing better," she said softly. "They're asking about you." Relief washed through me. Lena took a breath. "And I've spoken with the DA. I'm ready to testify, fully." I nodded. "Thank you." "It isn't just for you," she added. "It's for them. They deserve safety." Then her voice trembled, though she fought to steady it. "Mara, Evan has been calling me from unknown numbers. He's begging, he's threatening, he's crying, he's furious, sometimes all in one message." I swallowed. "What is he, Ed?" "He keeps blaming you," she whispered, "saying you ruined everything, that you turned me against him, that if I'd listened, none of this would have happened." My heart tightened. "It's all unraveling for him," she said, "and I'm afraid of what happens when someone who's unraveling has nothing left to lose." I reached across the table and took her hand. "We'll protect the children," I said firmly. "We'll protect ourselves. He doesn't get to take anything else from us." Lena nodded, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She stood, hugged me, and then left as quietly as she had come. That afternoon, Joel stopped by with a thick envelope. "These arrived through official channels," he said, "the documents regarding your mother's trust." My pulse quickened. He placed the papers on the table, and I slowly lifted the first page. The trust was real. It had been established decades ago by my mother and her brother. It held funds meant for me, locked behind layers of legal protections. Money that had been safe all along, but hidden because my mother believed I needed boundaries to withstand life's pressures. And a clause caught my eye. No beneficiary may access or distribute these funds under coercion or duress. I exhaled slowly. My mother had anticipated something like that, not specifically Evan's betrayal, but the possibility that love, unchecked, could become a weakness others might abuse. Joel pointed at another line. "And here, Evan isn't listed anywhere. He never would have inherited this money. He assumed too much." A hollow ache settled in my chest. All of this, his panic, his desperation, his attempt to take my life, had been fueled by an assumption. He had destroyed his own future, chasing something that was never his. Joel closed the folder. "This will strengthen your case. Shows motive, shows premeditation, shows misunderstanding on his part. A dangerous one." Before he left, he paused at the door. "We've gotten word from the task force. They think Evan is close to turning himself in." He called the courthouse anonymously, demanding to clear his name, but hung up before giving details. My breath caught. What does that mean? It means he's wavering. He knows he's running out of time. The next morning, everything changed. Victor called just after sunrise. "Mara," he said heavily. "They've found him." My grip tightened on the phone. "Where?" "At the old community park near your former home. He was sitting on a bench when officers approached. He didn't resist." I closed my eyes. The park. The place where I used to take him when he was small, where he learned to ride his first bike, where he scraped his knees and I kissed the pain away. He had gone back there, maybe searching for a version of himself he had long since lost. "They have him in custody," Victor continued. "He'll be held without bail. The arraignment will be later today." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "I'll be there." "Mara," he said gently, "you don't have to attend." "Yes," I whispered. "I do." The courthouse hallway was cold, lined with stone walls and echoing footsteps. When the officers escorted Evan into the courtroom, I saw him before he noticed me. He looked small, not physically. He was still tall, still broad-shouldered, but diminished. His eyes were sunken, his face exhausted. His clothes were disheveled. He looked like a man who had been running from himself for too long. When he finally saw me, something flickered across his expression. Not remorse, not guilt, but disbelief. As if he couldn't understand why I was there, or how I was still standing. The judge read the charges: attempted murder, endangering minors, financial exploitation, harassment, and more. Evan's jaw clenched. His eyes darted between the judge, the prosecutor, and then finally back to me. When the judge asked if he understood the charges, he whispered, "Yes." But he didn't look at the judge, he looked at me, as if I were the one sentencing him, as if I were the one holding the gavel. The arraignment ended quickly. They led him away in handcuffs. His eyes, wide and confused, stayed fixed on me until the doors closed behind him. I stood there, breathing slowly, grounding myself in the truth. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't punishment. This was justice. For me, for Iris, for Lena, for the children, for all the years I had let myself shrink so he could grow. Victor walked beside me as we left the courthouse. "You were strong today," he said. I shook my head gently. I wasn't strong. I was necessary. He gave a soft smile. Sometimes that's the same thing. That evening, alone in the apartment, I stepped onto the balcony once more. The city lights flickered like a distant constellation. Somewhere out there, Evan sat in a small, stark cell. Somewhere out there, the boy I had raised had been lost long before the man was arrested. I closed my eyes. The trial was coming. The testimony, the truth exposed under oath. But for the first time in months, I felt steady. Not because the fight was over, but because I finally understood something essential. Evan's choices were his, and mine were no longer tied to saving him. For the first time, I was choosing me, and the road ahead, painful as it would be, belonged to me too. The weeks leading up to the trial felt strangely suspended in time, each day passing slowly but heavily, like the air before a thunderstorm. The city kept moving as it always had, but my own world felt paused, held by the tension of what was coming. I spent those days preparing with Victor, reviewing documents, organizing evidence, and meeting with investigators. Joel visited often, updating me on every detail: Evan's behavior in custody, the prosecution's strategy, the witnesses subpoenaed, the timeline of events. Lena prepared as well. She grew quieter, stronger somehow. She kept the children shielded from everything, protecting their innocence despite the chaos around them. Iris stayed by my side, her presence steady despite the heartbreak she felt. Every night, I stepped onto the balcony of the apartment and let the wind brush against my face. It felt like the only place I could truly breathe. Eventually, the day of the trial came. The courthouse was filled, journalists, attorneys, spectators gathering like moths to a flame. The story of a son poisoning his own mother was too shocking to ignore. Cameras flashed outside, their lights flickering like nervous fireflies. Victor walked beside me, steady and composed. "Remember," he whispered, "you're here to tell the truth. Nothing more, nothing less." The courtroom buzzed as we entered. I sat at the witness table, my back straight, my hands folded neatly in my lap. When they brought Evan in, I felt my breath hitch. He looked smaller now, his once confident posture replaced with something hollow. Dark circles clung beneath his eyes. His hands trembled faintly as he sat down. For a brief second, I saw the little boy he once was, before life, choices, and disappointments twisted him into someone unrecognizable. Then he lifted his gaze. The moment our eyes met, that little boy vanished again. The trial began with opening statements. The prosecutor laid out the case: poisoning, the financial exploitation, the recordings, the live stream, the motive tied to the trust. Evan's attorney countered weakly, trying to frame him as overwhelmed, unstable, reacting out of stress rather than malice. But the evidence was overwhelming. One by one, witnesses took the stand. The doctor who treated the children, Joel, with his investigative finding, a toxicologist who confirmed the compound in the chocolates, Iris, tearful but steady, and finally, Lena. She spoke softly but clearly, recounting the safe she discovered, the documents with my name on them, the night she recorded Evan ranting about me, about Iris, about needing money. When she played the recording in court, there was a collective gasp. Hearing Evan's voice echo through the room, cold, calculating, made my skin tighten. I'm thinking I'm tired of waiting. He didn't look at her as she stepped down. Then, finally, it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand. Each step felt slow, heavy, deliberate. The bailiff swore me in, and I sat down, my heart thudding against my ribs. Mara, the prosecutor, began gently. Can you tell the court what happened on your birthday? So I did. I told them about the chocolates, Evan's call, the children's collapse, his confession, the confrontation at Iris's house, the recordings, the threats, the live stream. I kept my voice calm, steady, every word anchored in the truth. At one point, the prosecutor asked, "How did you feel when you realized your son had planned to kill you?" For a moment, the courtroom fell utterly silent. I folded my hands, heartbroken, but also awake. For the first time in years, I saw the truth for what it was. I understood the difference between love and complicity. The prosecutor nodded gently. "And why did you decide to come forward?" "To save myself," I said, "and to save everyone he might hurt next." When the defense attorney cross-examined me, he tried to twist my words, suggesting exaggeration, emotional instability, misinterpretation. I didn't falter, not once. When I stepped down from the witness stand, Victor nodded subtly. "You did perfectly." Evan avoided my gaze. The trial lasted 5 days. On the final afternoon, the jury filed back into the room, 12 faces tight with the weight of their decision. My heartbeat was steady, strangely calm. The foreperson stood. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts." The words settled through the air like a door slamming shut. Evan's face drained of color, his jaw clenched, his eyes darted wildly before landing on me. There was no apology there, no realization, no understand, only disbelief, as if I had been the architect of his downfall. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 8. The courtroom murmured, reporters scribbled, cameras outside flashed wildly. Evan shouted as officers pulled him from the room. Mom, you can't do this. You're still my mother?" I didn't answer. He disappeared behind the doors as his voice echoed faintly in the hall. The months after the trial moved quietly by, more quietly than any time in my adult life. I moved permanently into the apartment Victor had found. I joined a weekly support group for older women recovering from family trauma. I donated part of my savings to a program assisting grandparents raising grandchildren. And then something unexpected happened. I found purpose. I began volunteering at a community center, helping women navigate complex family or financial situations. Many came from households touched by manipulation or coercion. Many carried shame for loving people who hurt them. In their stories, I heard echoes of my own. Over time, those volunteer sessions evolved. People began asking me to speak at gatherings, then conferences. One afternoon, Victor called to tell me an advocacy organization wanted to partner with me. And so I created the Mara Foundation, an initiative dedicated to helping older women regain control of their lives after familial betrayal or abuse. It grew faster than I imagined. Workshops, therapy groups, legal support, financial education. Women came in shadows and left in light. For the first time in decades, I woke up each morning with peace in my chest. 2 years into this new life, I received a letter from Evan. I hesitated for a long time before opening it, but eventually I unfolded the paper. His handwriting was shaky. "Mom, I don't know what to say. I don't understand how everything went wrong. I think about you a lot. I think about the kids. I want us to fix things somehow. I know you're angry, but please don't give up on me. I'm still your son. I love you. I want another chance." I read it twice, then a third time. But closure. 5 years after the trial, the Foundation held its largest event yet, a citywide conference on elder protection laws. Hundreds of women attended, dozens of advocates spoke. I was the final speaker. As I stepped onto the stage, applause rose from every corner of the hall. I looked out at the sea of faces, women who had survived, women who were still healing, women who had reclaimed their voices. I spoke about strength, about boundaries, about the painful liberation that comes from facing truth. And as I finished, I said quietly, "Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who test our survival. But we are allowed to choose ourselves. We are allowed to step out of the shadows of fear. We are allowed to rebuild." The crowd stood in a long, rolling ovation. Afterward, as I stood outside the hall beneath the afternoon sun, Lena approached with the children, now older, taller, steadier. The youngest hugged me fiercely. "Grandma," he said, "we're proud of you." I smiled, my heart full. For the first time in my life, I felt complete. Not because I had defeated something, but because I had finally stepped fully into myself. My strength, my truth, my peace. Evan had tried to end my life. Instead, he had pushed me into a life I never imagined, one where I was not silent, not small, not afraid. One where I finally understood that choosing myself was not selfish. It was survival. And from that survival, I built something stronger than fear. A legacy, a voice, a life that belonged fully, completely, unquestionably to me.